Hello. For Module 4, we will be talking about arrays, multidimensional arrays, and strings. So let's start off with arrays. An array in C is a collection of data of single type stored in a contiguous memory location. In Python, you can have your array with several different types, whereas in C, it should only be one data type, which you specify during declaration. So we will be focusing on single dimensional arrays for this session. And then the next topics, we will be dealing with multidimensional arrays. So what are the two types of arrays in C? So the first one is your static arrays. And those are arrays whose sizes are known during compile time. And it is the simplest way to declare an array. So how do we declare an array? We start off with the data type and then followed by the name of your array. So this can be any identifier. And then enclosed in square braces or brackets is the size of the array. So here are some examples. First one is an array of integers. The name is number with 10 elements. The second one is an array of float named height and has 6 elements. And the third one is an array of characters with name, and 20 elements. You can also have initializations when you declare your array. So after declaring your array, it's followed by an equal sign, and then you need to enclose the elements inside braces. And each element should be separated by commas. So here are some examples. The first one is an integer array. Notice that there is no index here, or the size is not specified. So when you do this, you are allowed not to place a size if you are going to initialize the array, because the initialization will specify the size of the array. So here, you have how many elements of the array? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this actually declares an array of integer with 10 elements. So this one, it declares an array with 4 elements of type height, of type float. And here, an array of characters with 3 elements named greet. And then lastly, an array of characters with name, and a string 1 being assigned to it or initialized to it. Now, let's go to accessing elements of an array. And all we need to do is to provide an index after the array name. And in C, it uses a zero-based indexing, which means that the first element of your array has index 0, and then of course the last element of the array has an index of n-1. So here are some examples. Number 0 accesses the first element of the array number. Height 1 will access the second element of the array height. And here, printf first element %d number 0 will print the first element of the array number. So assigning values to array is the same as just accessing the array member using the index and then assigning a value to it. So for examples, here number 5 or the sixth element of the array is given the value 21. And then here, grid 0, the first element of the array is given the character capital S. So let's try this example. We start off again with our preprocessor directive, hash include stdio.h, and then our main program or function. Let's declare an array of float named grades with 3 elements. And then let's have 2 integers here. One is I, and then the next one is size. Let's initialize that to 3. Now let's try to populate our array. And for that, we're going to use a for loop. For I is equal to 0. I is less than size. Sorry, this should be semicolons. And I plus equals 1. So I plus equals 1 is just the same as I plus plus. It simply increases the value of I by 1 for each iteration. So inside our for loop, first, let's prompt our user to enter a grade. So we will write printf enter grade in subject %d. And what is that project? So it's I plus 1. So we need to add 1 to our size because arrays in C uses 0 indexing. So of course, the first subject will be stored at grades 0, the second one at grades 1, and the third one at grades 2. Next, we need to scanf our input. So we need %f for the format specifier because it is a float. And then we store it at the address of the specific member of the array. So that is ampersand grades, should be I. Okay. So let's just try to compile it to see if there are any errors even before finishing the code. So gcc, I saved the code as grades.c. So grades.c. And so far, there are no errors. And if we try to run it, we will just be inputting 3 grades. So let's try to continue the code. Next, we need another loop, this time to print the grades. So we can just use the same for loop, but instead of having a scanf, we will just change this to, or we will just edit the printf to your grade in subject %d is, we replace this with grades. We still need to leave this here because we need to specify which grade element it is, and then followed by grades I. And that's it. Let's try to compile and see if it works. So again, compilation, gcc grades.c. We have a slight error here. Your grade is subject D. There is a difference in format specifiers because what? this should be %f, and we forgot to write the format specifier for the grades, and this is %f as well. I'm sorry, the first one, since it's I and I is an integer, it is %d, and the second one is %f. So that should fix the problem. Okay, no more problem. And then let's try to run it again. So enter grade in subject 1. Let's say it's 1.0. The next one is 2.5. And the third one is 3.0. So your grade in subject 1, etc. So the output is not that great. So let's try to put the \n here and compile it again. And then run it again. 1, 2.5, and 3. So your grade in subject 1 is 1.0. Your grade in subject 2 is 2.5. And your grade in subject 3 is 3.0. Let's try initializing the array first. And actually, if you're going to initialize the array, you can opt not to provide the size of the array, and it will assume the size of the number of elements of your initialization. So for example, here I removed the index or the size, and let's say we have 1.5, 2.0, and 1.25 as the initialized elements of our array. So if we do this, the compiler will initialize an array with 3 elements. So it is the same as indicating 3 as the size of our array. So take note that you can only use or declare an array without any size if you are going to initialize it upon declaration. So by doing so, let's try to print the initialized array first, and then change the values, and then print it again. So if we try this, gcc grades.c, and then let's run it. So here are the first values or the initialized values of the array. And then let's try to change those values. So 2, 1, and let's say 4. Your grade in subject 1 is 2.0. Your grade in subject 2 is 1.0. And your grade in subject 3 is 4.0. So that is your static arrays. And for the next coding sessions, we will try to use this as an example, and maybe try to some other ways to access and manipulate our array.